So today, as you all know, we are going to discuss the modern aspect of PCOS. So now we are going to the introduction part. So polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay. So we'll just go into one word. Poly. Poly means many actually. Okay. Cystic means there are many cysts. Ovarian means there are many cysts in the ovaries. And syndrome. Syndrome, as you all know, syndrome is known for group of diseases. So this is polycystic ovarian syndrome. There's also another nomenclature for this, which is known as PCOD, that is polycystic ovarian disease. About a decade ago, if you read any textbooks, it was there that these two are very different things. When the disease is only limited to the ovaries, then it is known as polycystic ovarian disease, and when the disease involves entire all organs or different systems, then it is known as syndrome. But clinically, if you see, according to me, these are not two different things. First, initially, when the disease affects the person, it is the disease, but eventually, if you don't treat it, it is going to convert into syndrome. So this is one thing which I wanted to say. So that don't go into the nomenclature so much, whether PCOD or PCOS. PCOS is actually rampantly seen in population, also in OPDs. If you see regarding female infertility, almost 40% the cause of female infertility is PCOS, which is actually a big chunk of number. Then the last thing which I've written, and it is actually statistical data, that almost about 1 decade or 2 decades ago, PCOS was not so much rampant in India. In the Western world, it was emerging, but why it became rampant in India is because of the urbanization of the country. For example, previously females used to work only at home and they didn't have any other jobs and all. Because of the job, they are doing jobs, they are stressing out, they are having food at all the wrong times, sleep pattern is disturbed, some people are doing night job. It's a Western lifestyle, like everything is available at the push of the button. We have lift, we have elevators, we have escalators to take us to places. So because of all this, PCOS has occurred in India also. I am a female doctor, so I would definitely not advise to sit at home and go back to the being housewives and all. Definitely not. But what I want to advise that while doing all these things, we can take some care of ourselves. We can do some exercise. We can maintain healthy lifestyle. So that is the takeaway point for all the female doctors who are listening to me, and to the male doctors, you can advise all these things to the patients. So now going to the next part, I've written PCOS at a lot of times because for me it is not actually a disease, it is a syndrome only. In lots of cases we see that a lot of manifestations are there even from the start also. So it is a syndrome only according to me. The word heterogeneous is very important. Heterogeneous means something which has varied things in it, that is, a lot of things are there. These are the things which make up PCOS actually. Anovulation. So what is anovulation? Anovulation, AN, that is un means no, and ovulation means ovulation is not occurring. So in PCOS, what happens? The ovum is not able to come out from the ovaries. This happens. So why this happens? We are going to go into the detailed pathophysiology. Second presenting symptom with patient can come is irregular menses. Third is infertility, as I said. Also, patient comes directly with the scan reports showing polycystic ovaries. Nowadays, patients coming directly with scan reports have increased actually, especially PCOS patients. They don't stick to one doctor, they change doctors. And so mostly if you are getting a patient which is new to you, she would have done investigation suggested by the previous doctor and come to you. I'll get into the point where I discuss why PCOS patients shift doctors also. I'll tell you. And here I want you to just have a pen and paper in your hand, and I'm going to ask you one question. It's okay if you don't write the question, but at least I want the answer. If a patient comes, patient name is suppose A. A comes to your OPD and she shows you sonography. Okay, doctor, this is my sonography pelvis and it is showing that I'm having PCOD or PCOS, whatever it is written. You take the sonography from her hand and you start examining it. You see, yes, it is written patient is having PCOS. Both the ovaries are showing polycystic appearance. The follicles are there, which are multiple small follicles. All the findings are written properly or which are said in PCOD or PCOS. I'm asking, based on this sonography report, does the patient have PCOD confirmed, or the patient doesn't have PCOD, or the patient may be having PCOD? Options these are actually. So you're going to answer this. So whatever you think, whatever is the answer, it may be right, it may be wrong. At the end of the session, you will yourself tell me the answer of this, because we are going to go in that depth. For our next is excessive amounts of androgenic hormones. So what are androgens? That is, testosterone is one of the androgenic hormones. So why these things increase in PCOD? That also we are going to see in detail. Insulin resistance, as you have heard that insulin resistance occurs in PCOS, that also you will see. Often associated with obesity. I have actually used these words with very caution. Often associated with obesity. So if we see about PCOS also, it is often associated with obesity. Very important these words are. This means that a thin patient can also have PCOS. 30% of the patients are actually thin and 70% are obese. Maximum are definitely obese. I won't lie in that. So now type 2 diabetes is actually a complication of PCOS. It can sometimes be co-associated also. And high cholesterol level, actually in PCOS there is lipid metabolism is not proper, or there is lipid profile is abnormal. So the second name of PCOS you can say, or you can say the first name actually, because PCOS was initially known as Steen-Leventhal syndrome, because these were the two person who invented or who found out the disease in 1935. I have highlighted 1935 because I wanted to show you that this disease is not even 100 years old in modern medicine. We still rely on modern medicine, or we always think as Ayurvedic students that modern medicine has all the answers for PCOS. It is not like that. Our Sanhitas are journals. Do research on n number of patients, and then you see the research findings, and then you publish in the journal, and then that journal statement is like that only taken as like that is the perfect thing. For example, they write after that, taking selfie is a mental disorder, a study. So that we take it, oh yeah, right. So why not our Sanhitas? Our Sanhitas are not text. Our Sanhitas are actual journals in which they have researched on the patients, in which they have done they have seen that these symptoms occur in the patient, we give these medicines, and these medicines cured in these doses, in this time you have to give, there are so many times you are going to, all this is written properly. If you actually practice whatever it is written in the Sanhita without any doubt in mind, so you will definitely have success. I can say at least that. Just try it, stop doubting it and just try it. Over here, I've highlighted 3 words in the last sentence, which is physical, mental, and psychological level. So I spoke something about patient changing doctors. So imagine a girl who is having pimples, even if they are not too many, but they are persistent, they are constant. You are having unwanted hair on cheeks, etc. Every time you have to go to the parlor, every time you have to get it done, even if you're having exams, even if you're running on a busy schedule, whatever. And whatever you're doing, dieting, you're doing lots of things, you're doing exercise, you're doing yoga, you're doing so many things, and still you're not able to lose weight. The weight is increasing, your clothes are not fitting you. These all comes in physical strain, but just imagine how much mental strain and stress that person or that lady would have. Psychological strain when your menses don't come properly. Your menses are not coming properly. Every time when your date is almost near, you have to think, array, your menses will come. Additional stress is there. If there's a puja or something the next week, you'll feel, array, I don't want menses on that date. Again, you have to go visit a gynec doctor, all the tests, all the examinations, these medicines, that medicines. If you're taking ORSA pills every day, you have to take that. And if you are married, then Then about infertility, everyone around you is asking, "Arey, where is the baby? When are we going to get the baby?" And all the stress. And I just imagine what that poor girl goes through, yaar. So why would she not change doctors if you're just talking to her superficially? If you're just treating her like this only? I mean, she's coming. You ask, "Arey, how was the menses?" Like this, I said, "Take these medicines, go." If you talk to the girl like this, then a study was actually done on PCOS and mental like condition, like what the woman thinks. PCOS women, even if they are like proper, they look good and they are in a good, like they are not very obese and all, still they have little bit of inferiority complex. They feel that I'm not looking good, or they have that certain worries and doubts regarding their own body. And this is actually proven from this study, and this is a journal article. Buck her up mentally, because there is a mental factor which is also there in PCOS. So if you just talk to her compassionately, I think that will do the trick along with medicines. And this is not only for PCOS. Anything, if you say compassionately, even the hard truth, that is not that harsh. But if the harsh truth, if you speak the harsh way, the patient is not going to come to you again. So these are some tactics actually, which are not, unfortunately, not taught in medicine, but you come to know only by clinical practice actually. So enough of babbling. We are going right into the main topic, that is basic physiology. So this basic physiology is the most important, I'll say, topic, because if you don't understand this, you're not going to understand the pathophysiology of PCOS. And if you don't understand the pathophysiology, then you're not going to understand how to treat the patient and how to treat the disease by Ayurveda and modern science. So first, as you can see, this is the diagram of the ovary actually. So this area, entire area from here, the periphery area, this is actually known as the cortex. And the inner area is known as medulla. Actually, we are not concerned with the medulla in this PCOS. We are mostly concerned with the cortex. So just be with me for now. This is the most important thing. So just I want your full attention. Chalo, let's start. I'll start from over here. These are the primary follicles. Okay. These are the primordial follicles. Okay. From this primordial follicles to form primary follicles, it takes about 85 days, that is 3 menstrual cycles almost. These primordial follicles are present from the birth in every woman, and these primordial follicles are smaller than primary follicles, as you can see. The cells also proliferate when they become primary follicles. So this is taking place in the ovary. So the follicles which are coming out and forming all this, their maturation or their growth has started before 3 menstrual cycles, that is before 85 days actually. So this is something very interesting actually. Now primary follicles are, everything starts from over here. Primary follicles, even before the menses stop, that even on the day 2nd or day 3rd, the primary follicles start growing. It is day 2nd, day 3rd of menses, the primary follicles have started growing. These are small, then they become big, 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 big. But they don't attain a large size, they attain size of only 2 to 5 mm. Up to this stage, all this proliferation which is occurring, it is not under the influence of any hormone. Okay? These follicles are growing, they are taking resources from the nearby blood vessels and everything, and they are growing. After the follicles reach 2 to 5 mm size, FSH comes in, that is follicle stimulating hormone. This acts on it and it causes the growth of the follicle. So here, as you can see, this primary follicle is growing. By the day 5 to day 8, one of the follicle is selected which becomes the dominant follicle. This is the follicle which has become now the secondary follicle. So now from over here, secondary follicle, this Graafian follicle is actually formed. If you see the Graafian follicle, you can see that the antrum, that is the fluid content, has increased a lot. This is the oocyte or the ovum, and these are the cells which are known as corona radiata. At around 14th day of every cycle, this oocyte, that is ovum, is expelled from the ovary. This is known as ovulation. Some of the antrum, that is the fluid, comes out and the corona radiata is there. Here I want to say a very important thing is that the entire follicle doesn't come out. Only the ovum comes out. This is an important thing. And this follicle then becomes closed to form corpus luteum. And here they have shown the degeneration of the corpus luteum. So this is the ovarian basic cycle physiology. Now we will see the hormones. Which hormones? Hormonal physiology we'll see. So as I initially said, primary follicles start growing up to 2 to 5 mm. There is no hormonal interference. FSH comes in action and it causes the proliferation of these follicles. Whenever there is FSH causes secretion. It promotes these follicles, that is these cells of the follicles, to produce estrogen, as a result of which the estrogen level rises in the blood. So in this stage before ovulation, FSH is more and estrogen is more. FSH continuously stimulates these cells, that is the follicular cells, to produce estrogen, as a result of which there is something known as estrogen surge. That is, estrogen is secreted or estrogen is present at large quantities. This estrogen surge actually stimulates LH secretion. You would have heard that estrogen always has a relationship with FSH, but this is an exception only during pre-ovulation period. When estrogen is in high quantity, it stimulates LH secretion from the pituitary gland. So LH is now secreted from the pituitary gland, and this LH is the hormone which causes ovulation. LH surge or LH surges, LH is in excess quantity. Ovulation occurs after 36 hours of the LH surge. So LH is very important for ovulation. So after this, after the corpus luteum is formed, LH stimulates the formation of progesterone from the corpus luteum, and also estrogen is produced from the corpus luteum. So the first phase which we saw over there, FSH was there, then estrogen became very dominant at the just near to ovulation, then LH became dominant near to ovulation, and then progesterone became dominant. So in the next phase, that is from the luteal phase, that is after ovulation till the next menses occurs, actually progesterone is dominant and estrogen, it remains at a plateau level. That is, the level doesn't rise, doesn't fall, it remains at a steady level. Almost 2 to 3 days prior to menses, what happens, because if the conception doesn't occur, the ovum is degenerated in the endometrium of the uterus or in the fallopian tubes at times also, as a result of which the signal goes that the ovum that conception is not occurring, as a result of which the corpus luteum stops secreting estrogen and progesterone, and estrogen and progesterone levels decreases. As estrogen and progesterone levels decreases, FSH is secreted, and by the time again a new batch of follicles, that is primary follicles, are ready to be stimulated. So this is actually the basic physiology. If you understand this physiology, you will understand other things also. Over here I would like to say another thing, that estrogen is necessary for the building of the endometrium also. Because of estrogen, the endometrium thickness increases, and because of progesterone, the secretory activity of the endometrium, that is the endometrial glands, become functional. Also the blood flow, vascularity to the endometrium increases. So now we'll go into the pathophysiology of PCOS. So pathophysiology of PCOS is divided into these 4 compartments. First is the hypothalamus and the pituitary compartment. Second is the ovarian compartment. Third, periphery, and fourth is adrenal glands. So we are going to take each compartment in detail